Hello and welcome to episode 188 of the official EstablishTheRun.com podcast. My name is Adam Levitan. I'm one of the co-founders here at ETR. As always, joined by fellow co-founder Evan Silva. And today we are joined by a young man who Silva found doing videos from his kitchen counter in North Carolina, forced him to move to one of the most expensive places on earth in Stamford, Connecticut. This is a young man who blew my mind by making me take Devonta Freeman when he was coming out of Florida State in Dynasty, and then buried me by making me take Kevin White in Dynasty. A young man who first conquered the mock draft streets with the greatest mock draft of all time, and then conquered the victory lap streets with a 2-week-long victory lap. He was just in Miami, living it up in his new gig. It is one of the oldest friends of the show. It is, of course, Josh Norris of Underdog Fantasy. Josh, how's it going?
Adam, so great to hear all those kind words from you, a man for the last 3 years who, has talked about players showering together in their past and maybe that creating an edge, and, how having intercourse from different positions might result in a specific gender. I'm happy to know that now you can tell me when I can end this bet as the man, as the king of bets. So I'm just so thrilled to join both you and Evan here.
Never take an L on a bit. You never take an L on a bit. I mean, it just goes on. It will resolve itself eventually, and you'll know when to end it. And I actually think today, for your victory lap bit, today might be a good time to end it. Anyways, Evan, how's it going?
Yeah, I wish that you would have added to the intro that Josh Norris, because this was my favorite part of the 2-week-long victory lap, that he actually called Adam Schefter, to Adam Schefter's face, a fellow NFL insider. Still my favorite moment from the victory lap. I really appreciate that. I think it's hilarious.
Yeah. I got to talk to Adam the Monday after, and I think he just looked at me like I was an absolute doofus when I mentioned that to his face. Evan, I thought you were about to say that in the USA Today article, one, you're welcome for the shout out. And two, same as ETR, you're also welcome. And three, that they basically made it sound like I was the biggest leak of all time from NFL draft circles, texting you the Rams draft board from the floor of the bathroom in Earth City, Missouri. They failed to mention, Evan, that went on to land me a job for 8 years at NBC Sports, which I think is kind of the critical part, the critical missing piece of that legacy. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how Josh McDaniels wanted to build the next Hernandez Gronk with Michael Humanawanui and Lance Kendricks.
Yeah, that worked out.
Josh is such an old friend of the show that I got introduced to producer Luke, and me and producer Luke have done over 500 podcasts together now. And I got introduced to producer Luke through Josh. I got a recommendation from Josh to hire producer Luke. And by the way, man, producing these podcasts, as we've seen, there's major technical difficulties out there in the streets. Not with producer Luke, though, man. Producer Luke was all-time godsend. So thank you for that, Josh.
Oh, that's another you're welcome. That we're at number 3 already, about 3 minutes into the show. Okay, before we end this bet, can we actually talk about, it's so ridiculous to nail half the draft. Like 16 of 32 picks, guys. And look, I'm not the one who created a hype video for my own company post-draft about how much money we made people out there. All I did was go on with a bottle of Prosecco and a live stream at 1:30 in the morning and drink straight from the bottle and, have some fun online. 16 of 32 guys. I mean, not bad. Beat Nolan Araki back from 2006, beat the great Rick Gosselin. It's going to Canton in one day. We're going to make that happen.
No, 10 is a good number to hit, a real good number to hit. And that's my goal every year. I think I got 11 or 12 this year. 16 is insane. I think we can, put the bow on this one now though, Josh, nice. And maybe move on to some real analysis. We were going to do week 1 lines. We were talking about doing some week 1 lines, but we on this show, but we knew we had to set aside at least a third of the show to bring you down the stretch of this lap, and hopefully we can move on to some real analysis now that can help the people that are listening, who are probably they're probably cringing right now.
My mentors in this business. I'm so glad that now, still at age 32, I can learn new things. And so again, this is going to be a great lesson I learned today. Let's move on, Adam. Let's go into the real meat of this show.
What a legacy this is going to be. Nobody's going to ever remember anything about you except for this mock draft. It's all they're going to, on your tombstone, it's just to say best mock draft in NFL draft. It's not going to say anything else.
Yeah. Look, at least I won something that gave me zero monetary value too. It's not like I went out there and won Best Ball Mania 2 on Underdog for $1 million. No, I won the only thing in our football bubble that added a big fat zero into my bank account. So that was a great description and explainer to my girlfriend as well. She's like, why is this a big deal? And then I, again, checked my checking account and I was like, oh, it's really not a big deal, but let's make it a big deal.
Well, yeah, I saw you drop the girlfriend in there. Congrats on the sex. Okay.
All right.
On today's show, we are going to talk about this rookie class, not from a dynasty perspective, not from a long-term perspective. We're going to talk about this rookie class from an immediate impact perspective, for people playing redraft, for people playing DFS, people like me trying to get a handle on this class for the 2021 season. Before we get into it, wanted to remind everyone of two things. First, our draft kit is live. It's $34.99. It includes everything we think you will need to win your draft, whether it's best ball, dynasty, redraft, etc. Second, all subscribers to the draft kit receive a free $10 credit on Underdog Fantasy. Yes, Josh's company. $10 credit on Underdog Fantasy. If you already have our draft kit, just take our $10. If you don't have the kit yet, it essentially becomes $25. You're getting updates for the next 4 months. For instructions on how to claim your $10, whether you already have an Underdog account, whether you already have the draft kit or not, go to Silva's Top 150. See the editor's note at the top. All right, Josh, by the way, I know we want to get into the analysis, but this me picturing you at this content house in Miami with like these young dudes like doing push-ups and like vlogs and stuff with their shirts off and like doing Snapchat stuff. I mean, what a life. This new gig. I mean, you leave NBC Sports, me and Evan are here slaving away behind the scenes. You're in Miami doing push-ups with your shirts off and stuff like that. How's the new gig going?
Well, Underdog is great. I mean, I absolutely love the platform even before I joined. Unemployment was not fun for about a month and a half, 2 months, but I'm thrilled about Underdog. It's going from like a massive media conglomerate to a place that has like 21 employees now is so different. Love working with Hayden. We have, the Underdog football show out there, about, 20 episodes in so far. So everyone out there, if you enjoy what I say on this show, think about going and subscribing. Just help us out a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, kid was in Miami. Help him out. Okay. Let's start with Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts, and me and Evan talked about this on the last episode, how we are way lower than market on Kyle Pitts right now. His ADP is coming down, but it's still around 58th overall, the tight end 4. The argument I think that people make when you say bad things about Kyle Pitts' ADP is they say, hold on a minute, Adam. Think of it as getting to play Calvin Johnson at tight end. Think of it as getting to play a wide receiver at the tight end position. Is that an argument too far for you on Kyle Pitts? Do you see him as just an oversized wide receiver that has tight end eligibility?
Oh, I just want to note before he starts that Calvin Johnson actually didn't have a very good rookie year. Just so you know, but go ahead, Josh Norris.
Well, as you mentioned, right now is going as a tight end 4, which is so rich. Obviously the landing spot with Arthur Smith is fantastic in that last year with the Titans and in previous years, Arthur Smith, no one used more multiple tight end sets. So Evan, I guess my concern with this is just generally not knowing what to expect with Arthur Smith as the first year of calling plays with the Atlanta Falcons, because we know like his history dictated a lot of running and then being highly efficient as a passer on deep throws with his quarterback and also in the red zone. And so often we see like play callers when they switch teams, they lean on what they've done in the past because that's the reason they got hired, right? But now with, Julio for now and Calvin Ridley and Kyle Pitts, it's something where we want him to change his style. And I think he's smart enough to do that, don't you? Where we can get, 100 targets to Kyle Pitts, hopefully in year 1.
Yeah. I don't think, I'll let Evan go in a second here. I don't think that the question is usage on Kyle Pitts. When you invest this much draft capital, he's going to be on the field a ton. I think the question is more effectiveness, and do you think that he can have wide receiver type role on this team and have the tight end eligibility? So that was my thing. I think all of us are going to agree that tight end 4 is way, way, way too rich. But yeah, I don't know. Evan, you want to go ahead on what you think about Kyle Pitts in redraft? I know we already talked about it a little bit last time.
No, it looked like Josh wanted to say something. You go first and then I'll wrap up.
No, I guess my biggest question, though, is like, if you're trying to go out there and win $1 million and Best Ball Mania 2, don't you have to have at least some exposure of Kyle Pitts? Because he has the talent, to go and potentially put up tight end 1, tight end 2 season. Like if you just exit your entire summer without any shares of Kyle Pitts, I think that's a mistake also.
Okay. I mean, I think that's fair. I mean, I'm a big believer in Kyle Pitts, won the Mackey Award, checked every box, coming out of college, production, athleticism, size, dominance on the field when you watch him play. I mean, I totally get it. I think that he, he's going to be on a team that uses a lot of 2 tight end sets with Hayden Hurst. I know that they didn't exercise Hayden Hurst's option, but it didn't make sense for them to do that anyways. After they drafted Kyle Pitts, they still invested in Hayden Hurst, and I think he's going to be a big part of their offense. And it's still going to be running out, a high number, not one of the highest in the league, but a high number of 3 receiver sets. Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley are not going to come off the field, and they're going to use Russell Gage at least sparingly. Mike Davis can catch passes. The comparison to Calvin Johnson is it's real aggressive, and people are not looking back on the fact that Calvin Johnson, as a rookie, 15 games, 48 catches, 765 yards, 4 touchdowns. He didn't come in and light up the NFL in year one, and rarely do rookie tight ends. I love the offense. I'm a big believer in Arthur Smith, have been for multiple years. Feel like we were out in front on Arthur Smith. But I think that tight end 4 is awfully rich in a year where I think that I think he's in a bunch with guys like Tyler Higbee. I think that he belongs more in that tier as opposed to up there with Darren Waller, George Kittle, and Travis Kelce.
Yeah, Adam, we talked about this in a recent episode of the Underdog Football Show. Like the tight end position has just drastically changed. Only 2 tight ends last year went over 150 points. 5 did that in 2019 and 2018. So either something has like changed at the position where it's missing talent, or more of those opportunities are going to slot receivers. But if anyone is going to like enter into that 3 to 5 point mark, obviously the talent wise, Kyle Pitts has it, but then is it worth it to draft him like we're talking about as a tight end 4, or is it worth it to chase like a Dallas Goedert or chase a Tyler Higbee who, is further along in their development and don't have necessarily as many people to contend with targets with?
And is going 7 rounds later.
Right. The argument that I think I'm trying to make, that people are making, is that when you're using comps for Kyle Pitts, you shouldn't be using tight end comps. You should be using wide receiver comps. It sounds like you don't buy that.
I mean, in an offense, I think he can at least fill what Darren Waller did last year. Darren Waller is an absolute stud, but 1, Matt Ryan isn't throwing to Darren Waller, and 2, Darren Waller isn't dealing with Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley. Again, I'll go back to my biggest question. It's just Arthur Smith is smart, but we just have to see him basically kind of go to the opposite end of the spectrum, calling offense to get opportunities for all 3 of these to hit value.
I think that our assumption is more that he's just going to cater the offense to feature the talent that he has. But there is something to say for I think you made a good point coming right out the gates that, hey, at least maybe he'll start the season using the run game. I mean, they can't really use the run game any less than they did in Atlanta last year. And they're going to have this 2 tight end flexibility. I mean, Hayden Hurst can block. I think Kyle Pitts can kind of block too. I mean, he played in line on 65% of his snaps last year at Florida. He was not a slot wide, outside receiver tight end, even though he obviously can do those things. So it certainly will be a more balanced offense than it was last year, I think. But I think that our assumption is that he is going to feature the talent that he has, which, I mean, look, when he was in Tennessee, it wasn't all Derrick Henry. I mean, Ryan Tannehill had, a career year. Jonnu Smith had career years. Corey Davis last year had career years. We saw what A.J. Brown did. Anthony Ferkser came out of the woodwork and was like a productive player, So he's good at putting guys in positions to succeed. I love Kyle Pitts. I think the tight end 4 is far too aggressive.
Yep. One final point. It is aggressive, but what Arthur Smith, again, did so well, too, was red zone. We know Julio's not great in the red zone, has historically been bad in the red zone. I can see Kyle Pitts being one of the more utilized players at his position in the red zone this year.
Okay, let's move on to Jamar Chase. Current ADP is around 49th overall, late 4th, early 5th round. I think and Leone wrote an article today, it's up for free on the site, about why the Bengals are his favorite value stack right now. And obviously people are going to say, well, I don't know. They have T. Higgins. They have Tyler Boyd. The good news is for target share, no tight end on Cincinnati is sucking away targets at a high rate. Right now we have all three, Chase, Higgins, and Boyd, right around a 20% projected target share, which is actually pretty big. I mean, to me, in this class, and Evan and I have talked about this, to us, this wide receiver class is nothing special whatsoever. Ja'Marr Chase stands out head and shoulders above the rest. What do you think about Ja'Marr Chase year one impact, Josh?
That right now, the public absolutely loves him. I mean, he's being drafted as wide receiver 20 in comparison to T. Higgins as wide receiver 26 and Tyler Boyd as wide receiver 38. Like, if I want pieces, and I know Leone said this on streams, he thinks that, you know, a Bengals stack is going to win $1 million. The cheapest part of that is Tyler Boyd at wide receiver 38. And if I'm going to draft any of these three, it's definitely him. And Evan, you know this from watching the games last year, where the Bengals really struggled was throwing the football down the field. And if they can just like push all of those AJ Green targets over to Ja'Marr Chase, that's going to be a great rookie season, because AJ Green was like the least efficient pass catcher in the NFL last year. But I also wonder if some of that's on Joe Burrow as well. Like, I really like Joe Burrow. I like him as a value this year. I like how he can be a distributor, but I don't think he necessarily has a Trevor Lawrence type arm to make these downfield throws. But Ja'Marr Chase was definitely brought in to help that vertical element on this team too.
Off topic a little bit here, but staying on the Bengals, I think it was Dan Pizzuta, who was of Sharp Football Analysis. He does a great job. He was tweeting about, I think he was making a joke about the Zach Taylor is listed at 50-1 on DraftKings to win Coach of the Year, and his name was spelled wrong. They spelled his name wrong. They didn't spell it Z-A-C. They spelled it Z-A-K. And but either way, Zach Taylor at 50-1 to win Coach of the Year. I mean, Leone's out here calling the Bengals our Bengals. I was listening to the PFF forecast with Eager and George Cheruri, and they were calling the Bengals our Bengals. And if the Bengals are going to be good, which I'm still skeptical of, but I do respect other smart people, you know, and I think that Eric Eager and all these guys are really, really smart. And if this, and obviously Leone is, even though he's stuck in his spreadsheets, you know, if this team can go like, you know, 10-7 somehow, and they popped up with a real nice schedule too, by the way.
Yeah.
If they can somehow eke out like 10-7, I think Zach Taylor should absolutely be right in the mix for NFL Coach of the Year. And man, the division is not forgiving. But I wanted to just point that out at 50-1, and it was sad to see Zach Taylor all the way down there buried with guys like John Gruden at 50-1. But I think that's maybe a nice little long shot opportunity.
I think on Ja'Marr Chase that there are a lot of wide receivers in this class are going to struggle for year one impact for one reason or another. Ja'Marr Chase is one who I think can step right in. Obviously, the ADP reflects that already. But man, I mean, Ja'Marr Chase, it looks like the kind of prospect that steps right in. A lot of these other guys, even if they have a lot of draft capital behind them, and we'll talk about them, I don't think they can step right in and have really week winning impact in year one. Let's get to some of the running backs here. Najee Harris is obviously going to be the first rookie off the board in just about every fantasy football draft. Right now, he's going kind of early second, late second round, RB13. I believe Silva has him as the RB14 right now. I think the big question, Josh, is what do you think when you're watching Najee Harris of him as a pass catcher coming out? What do you think of him overall? Because I don't think that there's no, like, it's silly to sit here and be like, argue about how much opportunity he gets. Everybody knows Najee Harris can have a ton of opportunity. That's not the question. The question is, what will Najee Harris be able to do with it? And I'm most interested in, how did you think he was as a pass catcher coming out, and how will he do in the NFL as a pass catcher?
Yeah, overall, and I think Evan saw this the same way, I thought he was a solid yet unspectacular player, but maybe the most intriguing element was that pass catching ability. Like, if you turn on his games against LSU and Texas A&M, he was like 12 to 15 yards down the field in these back shoulder fades that he was catching away from his body. It's like uncommon stuff for someone that size. The rest is like fine. And like, I think he can be an accumulator on the over 300 touches that he's going to get. This is such a difficult team to feel good about, though. Like, not the skill players. Like, if you put the skill players on a piece of paper, you're kind of in love. Like, you have Deontay and Chase Claypool and Juju, and then now a running back that they invest a lot of draft capital in. but the quarterback fell off an absolute cliff. And then the offensive line is just significantly worse than it was last year. And it was an issue last year. So I just have no faith in this team right now. And that's why it's difficult for me, despite liking their individual talents, feeling comfortable of taking someone like Najee Harris at running back 13, but he's also kind of on that cliff of, oh, we like all the players above him at the position. And then after him, we have questions.
Yeah, Evan, you're going to have to pay a big premium to get Najee Harris on your team this year, whether it's dynasty, whether it's redraft. I'm sure his DFS price will be expensive right out of the gate. How do you feel about him as a pass catcher and overall in redraft right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's fine as a pass catcher. I think he's good as a pass catcher, especially for a running back his size. We don't always see guys like this get the utilization that he did, especially in his final season as a receiver. And that always bodes well when the running back in college is able to have, high-end receiving production in college. That bodes well for his production historically as he transitions to the pros. He's not going to come off the field. I share all the concerns about the Steelers. They might be an anemic offense. They might be a bottom 10 offense. I think that's very much in play. Their offensive line. I think he's going to average like 3.6 yards per carry.
Yeah.
And he's going to finish as an RB1.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard for me to call the Steelers offense potentially anemic when they have the players that they have. And I understand Ben's off a cliff, and I understand the offensive line is terrible. I mean, even last year, they were putting up big fantasy numbers last year, even when the offense was really struggling. And a lot of that was volume based. I mean, when Ben throws the ball 50 or 55 times and you're in full PPR, and these guys, Juju catches 8 for 64 and Deontay catches 9 for 70, those are really useful games in full PPR.
But my concern is hasn't their recent decisions point them in the direction that we're not going to see that volume this year? Maybe it changes and maybe they think that's how they can win football games. But to me, the change in offensive coordinator and the change in selecting a running back in the first round makes them want to be more old school, traditional Pittsburgh Steelers football. And I don't think they're set up for that at all. Yeah. I kind of just wish they embraced what they did last year and tried to lean into that strength, but it seems like they want to go back into the time machine and be what they used to be a little bit.
The offensive coordinator is Ben. Come on, Josh. We know the offensive coordinator is Ben. Okay. You don't buy that. Let's move on to Travis Etienne. We talked about pass catching. Obviously, Travis Etienne's calling card is the pass game. And, there's all this rhetoric out there. And I kind of think I haven't liked what I've heard from Urban Meyer. I'm a little scared that he's going to be a mess and he's going to turn a lot of these players into a mess. James Robinson is obviously still there, but undrafted and no loyalty whatsoever with this regime. They brought in Carlos Hyde as well. I think Travis Etienne can play some sort of DeAndre Swift role as a rookie, which had some big games, had some spike games, and had a lot of really bad games in terms of volume. Josh, what do you see as Travis Etienne's year one impact in fantasy?
Yeah. So my opinion and thought process on Etienne is a little bit out there. So stick with me. I'm a sicko. I'm a lunatic. And I go back and watch all these post-draft press conferences. And I feel like the phrase, he's going to be our third down running back, was attached to Etienne immediately from Urban Meyer. But if you go back and watch the totality of his statement, that's not really what the comparison that he made. In fact, the comparison he made was to Percy Harvin. And then when you consider that Urban Meyer already said that, well, we actually wanted Kadarius Toney with this selection, it makes you wonder what role Etienne is going to have, because I don't think it's going to be as this traditional running back. Evan, I think it's going to be closer to Percy Harvin, Curtis Samuel at Florida and Ohio State. And again, I went back and looked at Percy Harvin's stats. As a sophomore, as a junior, he had 83 rushing attempts, 70 rushing attempts, and 59 catches and 40 catches. That's over 100 opportunities each year, 130, 140. That's just kind of a role that people thought Laviska Shenault was going to get. So I'm totally out on Laviska because that doesn't seem to be in the equation at all. And then Urban keep mentioning James Robinson and Carlos Hyde. I do think this is going to be that outside to inside slasher type player that they can get speed on the field that they thought they were sorely missing.
Yeah, I like that. One thing that we talked about a lot before the draft was that if Travis Etienne was going to go in the first round, which we loved as a bet, and was going to, hit his under and, maybe the first running back drafted, which he missed by one spot. It was going to be because a team would be able to justify to themselves not viewing him as a running back, but viewing him as a playmaker. And that's, that aligns with, your regurgitation of what Urban Meyer said at his at the post-draft press conference. So I totally understand that take. Don't be totally out on Laviska Shenault though. I think he's going to be on the field a ton still. I think that Trevor Lawrence is going to elevate the heck out of this offense, and that he's essentially going to end up being maybe, their tight end. And because he's such a stud after the catch, and that's no disrespect to Tim Tebow. I don't say bad stuff about Tim Tebow, even though I know everybody loves to say bad stuff about Tim Tebow, but Tim Tebow is probably not going to make the team. But I think that Laviska Shenault, they don't really have a tight end on their roster. And I think that Laviska Shenault can kind of fill in for that role. I don't know. What do you think? Not
to regurgitate more, because that's an awful word that you just used. But
no, it's not.
Urban Meyer was basically like, oh, we're so glad we signed Chris Manhertz because he's the best run blocking tight end in the NFL. And so I think he's going to be on the field often. And I also believe that the Jaguars wide receiver coach came out and said that we want Laviska to do more like true wide receiver things, which is not what I want to hear with him. Like, at least I don't hate the player. I just like where he's going in drafts right now. Like on Underdog, Laviska Shenault's going as wide receiver 40. That's right after Tyler Boyd, Jerry Jeudy, and Curtis Samuel, and just ahead of Michael Gallup and like Jarvis Landry. So I'm just kind of out at that price tag.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
We're big on DJ Chark though, right?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
I'm really excited for this offense. And you've talked about this a lot, where while they might not be the best players, the 5 offensive linemen coming back had some continuity. And then, you add Walker Little to it. Trevor Lawrence is just an absolute baller. I'm a little nervous of Urban Meyer and just like his heavy handed stuff. Like, it's so clear that he loves his previous relationships. It was true like with 5-star recruits in the draft. It's true with Carlos Hyde and now Tim Tebow. But I think Darrell Bevell can win out on like a play-to-play standpoint. And I'm excited for this Jaguars team for sure.
So in the division, Colts are like minus money to win the division. They're, I think, minus 106. The Titans are plus 120 or something like that.
And the Titans.
And then the Texans are like, obviously, we're not messing with the Texans, but the Jaguars are plus 750 to win the division. Do you think that's crazy? Like, I don't think the Colts are a good bet. And I'm a little down on the Titans this year. They still have glaring holes, I think, after the draft.
Yeah. I think the Titans have missed their window, honestly, and that might come back to bite me. But they've been in this groove of let's bring the boys back together. And that didn't work last year, and they've only gotten worse. Like they've let go of players. So
and who knows what the effect on the minus effect of losing Arthur Smith will be. Correct. Going from him to Todd Downing.
Yeah. One final thought on the Jaguars, like from a team building perspective, there's like nothing better than having an undrafted free agent who's a capable running back, right? So again, the signal that they wanted to draft Kadarius Toney instead of Travis Etienne points to me that he's just not going to play that typical running back thing. And that leads me to have no clue how he's going to be used, preseason. But I think we're going to learn a lot about his usage during the preseason. Yeah,
I think that makes sense. And obviously it was just from a real life perspective, just a terrible pick. And also what is Urban Meyer doing? Like, okay, you took Etienne. Why do you have to come out and say, man, I really wish I had Kadarius Toney? Like, what kind of dick is this guy?
Yeah, he is a dick. There's nobody that Urban Meyer loves more than Urban Meyer. That's for sure.
Yeah. I'm out on this dude, Urban Meyer, man. So I don't have a bet. I don't have a bet on this division, to answer your question, Evan. I think if I had to, I would take the Titans, but I understand it. And it's probably not a bet for me at 120. Last year I had them. I think I got like plus 160, plus 170, plus 180 or so on the Titans. Plus 120, I think is a little thin this year on the Titans. I don't want to spend a lot of time on Trey Sermon because we've talked so much about him already. But Josh, we had Matt Waldman on, who absolutely loved Trey Sermon. Kyle Shanahan obviously is a big fan of Trey Sermon. To me, that's enough for me to also be high on Trey Sermon. I'll ask you the same question I asked about Najee Harris, though. Like, if Trey Sermon's only going to catch 20 passes or something in 17 games this year, it's not going to be easy for him to get there at an ADP of around 70 or 65, which it'll probably close at. What do you think about Sermon as a pass catcher and overall.
Yeah, Trey Sermon's going as running back 30 right now in Underdog. And I knew that this was such a massive opportunity, this podcast for me, that I went back and watched Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch after they drafted Trey Sermon. And we've seen that Kyle Shanahan be incredibly honest in his pressers and like tell you exactly how he's going to use a player. I was a little bit disheartened after he drafted Trey Sermon because it was so much draft capital, 2 4th-rounders to move up into the 3rd round for the Shanahan family. That's like, donating multi-millions of dollars at the position. But it's one that he said in the last 2 years, their running back 3, their 3rd player on the depth chart, has played around 38% of the team snaps. That's led the NFL in that time. So to me, this is more of a move for like the depth move for 2022 because Mostert, Wilson, Gallman, everyone else except for Eli Mitchell, who took the later on, are all in the final year of their contract. So it's kind of like a cheap way to refresh the position. So while I think talent-wise, I love Raheem Mostert, but Trey Sermon might be neck and neck with him, I don't think that there's as clear of a path as we kind of hope for, and especially what running back 30 indicates for him to get touches immediately.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Man. I don't like.
I think that's a fine take.
I don't like that. I mean that regurgitation does not fit my narrative here.
Me either. Before the previous 24 hours, I was right with you. I was like, man, I can't wait to take Trey Sermon. He's going to be in all my teams.
The thing about these press conferences, Josh, they're going to get on the field, and then what happens when Trey Sermon starts running circles around Mostert and Gallman?
That's the thing. I mean, no, it is valuable to study the post-draft press conferences, and Scott Barrett does a good job of it as well. And Norris started the whole thing. But another positive data point for Trey Sermon arrived yesterday when the 49ers came out with the easiest schedule in the NFL.
Yeah.
So I probably should have been on this earlier. But I sprinkled a little bit on everything. I sprinkled a little bit on them to win the division, to win the conference, to win the Super Bowl. They're over on, I think it's 10.5 wins, which is a lot. But man, this team is returning an unbelievable defense. I think that Trey Lance is absolutely a candidate for Offensive Rookie of the Year. I think he gets on the field sooner rather than later. I think their offensive line is going to be good. They've got Kittle, Debo, Ayuk all coming back. This team is freaking loaded. And I think that they're a team that we should be we should be on the aggressive side this year, and that extends to Trey Sermon as an Offensive Rookie of the Year candidate, but also Trey Lance. I think they're both worth betting on.
Yeah, I guess right now my issue is you have to make a choice between Raheem Mostert and Trey Sermon. They're going as running back 29, running back 30.
Trey Sermon, it's Sermon. Come on, Josh.
Okay. No,
are you familiar with the age model? I don't know if you are.
Okay. It's another bit that's entering my periphery at the moment. You mentioned Trey Lance, by the way, when you guys were so kind to join us for Underdog-a-Palooza, he was going as quarterback 25, quarterback 30. Evan, that's vaulted all the way up to quarterback 15 now on Underdog. Yeah. So that seems rich, but I also think as soon as Trey Lance is deemed the starter, he's going to be a top 10 quarterback. Yeah. So I still think it's a value out there.
Yeah. People start realizing that Trey Lance has the same rushing upside as Jalen Hurts, and all of a sudden he's going to be a top 15 quarterback. It's just no brainer.
Right.
Okay. I want to talk about Javonte Williams for a second. I feel like a lot of people may don't know a lot about Javonte Williams. Me and Evan talked last time a bunch about the Melvin Gordon situation and how Evan is extremely low on Melvin Gordon. Javonte Williams ADP currently around 62, so certainly no bargain on Javonte. What do you think about Javonte's game? Does he have enough raw talent to pass Melvin Gordon at some point in his rookie year?
Yes, because the investment, and also because Melvin Gordon is on the final year of his contract. I think often when you think about the NFL draft, you have to look at decisions that not only fill an immediate need, but also declining players who are on the final year of their contract with basically no guaranteed money. And that fits Melvin Gordon. I think there are other decisions basically letting Phillip Lindsay go for free dictates that they want players who are great on contact with broken tackles. Melvin Gordon was top 5 in the NFL last year in terms of forced missed tackles. Guess who is the best prospect in the last 10 years of PFF in terms of broken tackle rate in college football?
Mike Boone.
Well, I mean, also talk about stealing bits. You completely like stole Mission Impossible style Mike Boone from out from under me, but
appropriated Mike Boone.
Yeah, you buried his career now. Good for you. Look what you did to Mike Boone. You can't do that, by the way, with Kene and Nwangwu later on in the preseason this year with the Vikings. Let's finish up this Broncos point though. So, and again, doing it with Javonte Williams, it's clear that either it's a Vic Fangio thing or whoever else in that building that they really want a running back that can create in their own. And they said that Javonte was the best at that in the last few years, I'm assuming since Nick Chubb. So while there's no like immediate path for him to get playing time as running back 27, that's right around Kareem Hunt, Chase Edmonds, James Robinson, Raheem Mostert. That's not too rich for me. I'll probably exit with some this summer.
Well, I disagree that there's not a direct path for playing time. I mean, Melvin Gordon was a part-time player last year. And so, I mean, Javonte Williams immediately has a role right out of the gate. To me, the better question is he better than Melvin Gordon at the goal line? I don't know. Is he better than Melvin Gordon in the pass game? I don't know, because those are where the value touches are in fantasy, obviously.
Melvin Gordon's getting cut, guys.
I think so.
Be real. Yeah.
Yeah. They called Javonte a 3-down running back too, if we're still going with quotes here.
Another thing I wanted to say about the Broncos is their schedule stacks up really, really nicely as well. They need to go get Aaron Rodgers. I mean, they need to trade 3 ones to go get Aaron Rodgers. Just do whatever it takes. I mean, I think they've got young talent on offense, but they've got nothing at quarterback, and their window's kind of small. I mean, shoot, they're Von Miller. I mean, he's, really, really headed down there in terms of age. And then, I mean, their entire coaching staff could like retire next year. Mike Munchak and Vic Fangio, like this window is really, really small. They need to do whatever it takes to go get Aaron Rodgers. And I mean, with the way that their schedule looks right now, and their win total actually has moved up a full game since a couple of weeks ago. They were at 7.5, and now they moved up to 8.5.
It's the Aaron Rodgers stuff, yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I mean, it quite possibly could be, man. They need to go do this. Like this is something that they have to do, I think.
And if Teddy's starting, like running backs are going to get some targets. We've seen it with Christian McCaffrey. We saw it with Mike Davis last year. I mean, there were games with 6 to 8 to 10 catches for Mike Davis last year. So while Javonte didn't have to do a bunch of that at UNC because they had a great player in Michael Carter as well, I certainly believe that the Broncos believe he can do that.
Let's talk about Justin Fields quickly here. Justin Fields has an ADP of 124, just behind Trey Lance, who we just mentioned. Trey Lance up to around 115, 118. I think what people want to know, Josh, about Justin Fields is he wasn't really a runner in college. He only ran for 867 yards in his final 22 college games. What do you think about him as a runner at the NFL level? Because that's going to be the big question in fantasy, of course. Will he run for 30, 40, 50 yards a game at the NFL level?
I mean, he's a total freak. We love betting on freaks at the quarterback position. I know what you're saying. Like, there were a lot of times when he wanted to stay and probably maybe even prove that he can work in the confines of his pocket. And he can absolutely do that. Then you see other times, I think it was against like Michigan State, where Trey Sermon's running down the field and he's running neck and neck with him. And then making a block at like the 5-yard line. Unreal speed he has. My concern, and Evan has certainly outlined this with Chicago Bears. Sure, they made a great decision, in our opinion, in trading up for Justin Fields. But does that mean they're going to make another correct decision in playing Justin Fields, even if he's better than Andy Dalton? Because they keep regurgitating the Alex Smith, the Patrick Mahomes theory and timeline. That's tough to do, when you go 1-4 at the start of the season. But I also think the NFL is all about keeping your job for as long as possible. And maybe they think like that will extend a year onto their stay if they can say, oh, well, Justin Fields is our plan in 2022 and Andy Dalton is that this year. We've heard other people do that and it doesn't work out. If Justin Fields gets on the field, I mean, he's quarterback 17 right now. He's automatically a top 10 quarterback, period.
That is such a donkey comparison. People forget how good Alex Smith was when Patrick Mahomes was drafted. Alex Smith was legit good. I mean, they were winning a ton of games. That's such a donkey comparison. I think Fields is going to be the starter really, really early. I think Evan does too.
I mean, I think he ought to be. It's just it's a completely bunk narrative that these quarterbacks benefit from sitting, again, in any walk of life, doing anything. the only way to get better, the best way to get better by far is by doing it and taking your lumps and making mistakes and learning from them. It's not from sitting on the sidelines, joking with, your buddy and not necessarily even focused on the game, and like learning and developing. I mean, that's so fake. The way that you develop is by doing things. And that's what they need to do with Justin Fields. I don't care. They're like, oh, I've heard the narrative. They're going to play the Rams in week 1 out in LA. Whoa. They can't put Justin Fields out there in LA in September. What are these people even talking about? They've talked themselves into doing what is actually wrong for the young kid. The kid needs to get out there, make mistakes, and get better every week. I mean, that's how you do it. That's how you improve at anything.
Yeah. I mean, they're never winning anything with Andy Dalton. At least like you increase your variance by playing Justin Fields and you give yourself a lower floor and a higher ceiling. Of course, that's what they should be wanting to do. It makes no sense. But anyways, yeah.
I mean, you have Darnell Mooney going as the wide receiver 55. If Justin Fields is playing, let's get on that train a little bit. Allen Robinson and wide receiver 11, no matter where he's been going the last few years, he's been hitting value. I'm in. I'm a little nervous though, Evan, like Matt Nagy as a play caller. Like we were able to, put some blame on Mitch Trubisky and Nick Foles. And I would even say maybe in the best times that Mitch played with Matt Nagy was when he was running and using his legs. But when they would get in the red zone, like Matt Nagy, at least from the outside looking in, looked like one of the worst red zone play callers in the NFL.
I just want to know if these people that think that Justin Fields shouldn't start because week 1 is a road game, do they think that LA, like the Rams, they think that's like a hostile environment? Because that's not a hostile environment. Like no one cares. It's a bunch of like movie stars and people that are trying, want to be movie stars. And I mean, let the kid play, for goodness. Andy Dalton, come on now. Come on.
All of them. Let Mac Jones play. Let Trey Lance play. Let all of them play.
I agree.
All right. I want to end this by talking about a bunch of wide receivers kind of rapid fire here because, I mean, God, this wide receiver class, I mean, the worst wide receiver class in the history of the NFL when it comes to PSM, the penis size model. I mean, I've never seen a worse wide receiver
and my
class.
bit has to end. Yours you add a new one every single week.
I've never seen a worse class in the PSM. But anyways, ton of draft capital. Let's start with Jaylen Waddle. Jaylen Waddle is going around 92nd overall right now. We only have him projected for 5.5 targets per game. It's hard to give him more than that with Devontae and Fuller and Gesicki and Gaskin and Preston and Bowden all there. It's hard to get Jaylen Waddle above 5.5 targets per game. It's just, and also all this like next Tyreek Hill bullshit that I just cannot take anymore of people kind of calling every small fast wide receiver the next Tyreek Hill. I can't take it anymore. But anyways, Jaylen Waddle has a ton of draft capital, man, 6th overall. Do you think he has a year 1 impact where he'll actually be usable in fantasy?
Usable, yes. Do I want to draft him as wide receiver 42? Probably not. I think he's electric. I mean, what he's so great at, because he's going to play the slot, right? You have Wolf on the outside. You have Devontae Parker on the outside. He just replaces Mike Gesicki. Sorry, Adam. But that's what he's going to do in the middle of the field. And he's so great in those 1 to 7 yard receptions and creating yards after catch on those. And then when, safeties and corners and linebackers start biting on those, then he'll run over your face and hit you on vertical routes. He did it at Alabama all the time. I mean, this is setting up to figure out if Tua's the guy or not. And I'm excited about Jaylen Waddle, but you're right. I just don't know. And it's great that you threw in Lynn Bowden's name. I don't think he's going to take targets away from Jaylen Waddle, but is he going to reach 100 targets this year? I think that's a fair question to ask.
Yeah. Evan, I don't think we got your take on Jaylen Waddle yet as a year 1 impact.
I don't think it's a whole lot different than what Josh said. I do like the relationship of Jaylen Waddle and Tua coming out of college, and we got a lot, absolutely. And we got a bunch of those this year. But I think it's going to be really up and down. I think he's going to, have like a game here or there where he goes for like 120 yards and a touchdown. Yeah. But I think they're going to be really tough to peg. I mean, I think, the easy way out of this is to say, solid best ball pick and probably not someone I'm going to really want to pursue in redraft.
We already talked about Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, shower narrative. We just talked about Jaylen Waddle and Tua, shower narrative. Now let's talk about Devonta Smith and a sneaky shower narrative. People don't remember. Maybe they do. I assume they do. Jalen Hurts, of course, spent his first 3 years at Alabama before moving on to Oklahoma. Obviously, the knock on Devonta Smith is he's so skinny. He's 165 pounds, blah, blah, blah. I still think he comes in as an immediate number 1 wide receiver ahead of Jalen Reagor. I'm curious what you think Josh, of Devonta coming out, would you take him above Jalen Reagor right now? And as prospects, how would you compare Devonta and Jalen Reagor?
Oh, yeah. I'd definitely take him above Jalen Reagor. I mean, he's going as wide receiver 36 right now. That's hefty. I think Devonta Smith wins, the most target share among rookies, but I don't think from a raw data standpoint, that's going to lead to the most targets among all rookies. I just don't know how often, and Evan, maybe you have a better gauge than Adam, of how many passes we expect from Jalen Hurts this year. It's obviously a different play caller.
Yeah.
But, Jalen Hurts got home as a fantasy asset, throwing 13 or 16 times a game. I think Devonta is going to be great, like real life player for that team. But I just don't know if I can, get to 8 to 10 targets for him at that wide receiver 36 label.
Right. Yeah, I think that the way that this is going to end up working out, and it's partly because of what you just pointed out, but also partly because of what Leone and Karain have pointed out, is that the Sirianni believes in, using like a big wide rotation of receivers, and he's got the personnel at this point to play 4 receivers and multiple tight ends, and this is going to be a log jam for targets. And then you incorporate the fact that, I think it's going to be sort of like a knockoff offense resembling the Ravens, like a very poor man's version of the Ravens. And we're not going to get, heavy target numbers for anybody. And with the Ravens, I mean, at least they're, they have like a narrow target distribution. I mean, it's Marquise Brown and Mark Andrews every week. There's a bunch, way more guys to deal with in Philadelphia. I think that when I do my updates in the top 150, I think I'm going to actually lower all the Eagles pass catchers and maybe even boost up Jalen Hurts. I mean, I think Jalen Hurts is the guy that you go after here.
Doesn't that make us sad though about Dallas Goedert? Evan, I remember years ago, you and I thought like Dallas Goedert could be a top 5 talent at the position.
Oh, I think he maybe becomes that, but he still can only finish like tight end 7 or tight end 8.
Yeah. And like right now he's going as tight end 7, and that's not even factoring in Zach Ertz, like not being on this roster, even though he's still on the roster. Yeah. Like I wish we had more opportunity for him, because he could be that player who ascends at the position. But again, the volume is the big question.
Yeah, I think undoubtedly Zach Ertz is not going to be on this team. I mean, everybody around the Eagles assumes already that Zach Ertz is not going to be on this team one way or another, trade or cut. Okay, some of these flyer wide receivers, I think my favorite one is actually Elijah Moore. And I think there's a lot of outs here. He's going 142nd overall. And let me give you guys some of the outs that Elijah Moore can get to playing time. Either Jamison Crowder gets cut or gets traded. Elijah Moore could just flat outplay Denzel Mims. And then we have injury history with Crowder and Corey Davis, certainly, and that could lead to playing time for Elijah Moore. So at an ADP of 142, I think there's a lot of outs for Elijah Moore. I know the scouting community loved Elijah Moore. I know the analytics community also loved Elijah Moore. So out of all these guys like Rondale, Terrace Marshall, Amari Rodgers, even Rashad Bateman, I think my favorite one of these flyer guys is Elijah Moore. What do you think about that take, Norris, and any of those other guys I mentioned that maybe you like more or less? Bateman, Rondale, Terrace Marshall?
Yeah, I'll just stick on Elijah. I agree with you. I mean, he's going as wide receiver 61 on Underdog right now. That's after Bateman. That's after Rondale Moore. And it's because he's not like, quote unquote, a starter right now, right? But as soon as he is, he's going to get vaulted up. Like, I agree with a lot of the narratives you just threw out, but also the one that, LaFleur is coming from that Kyle Shanahan tree. And we know that Shanahan in the past basically evaluates for yards after catch threats. And while Zach Wilson at BYU was throwing it up to wide receivers who are great in contested catches like Denzel Mims and Corey Davis, like those are how they win probably in this offense. The best yards after catch threat is Jamison Crowder. And actually it's already Elijah Moore on the roster. And Crowder maybe gets traded for a 6th and 7th round pick. If they want to save some money, they can cut him. What stood out to me was Joe Douglas saying, how you win the NFL is you create big plays and you limit big plays. And that was it. That was a simple statement. Who's going to create more big plays in this offense? Elijah Moore, Jamison Crowder. The answer is pretty simple.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Evan, how would you compare Elijah to Bateman and Rondale?
I think I would go with Bateman first, Elijah 2, and then Rondale 3. But man, I don't have a great grasp on any of their roles right now because Bateman's got to overcome Sammy Watkins, and I think he should be able to, but it's not a guarantee. And then Elijah's got to overcome Jamison Crowder, and I think the Jets should move Jamison Crowder. And so I think that their roles are not real clear right now, and it's hard to have definitive takes. But I heard what Josh said, and I like it.
We just finished our 6 favorite stacks episode on the Underdog Football Show, and the Jets are one. Like, there's only one player going the top 100 on their entire team, and it's Michael Carter, which is pretty phenomenal to think about. Like, you can get that stack super late, and it's like one that's, I'm not going to say underestimated, but just unknown. And sometimes those can hit. Like, if we think their offensive line is good, which they've invested in, think the play caller might be good, the talents they've invested in too, that would be fun. I'll quickly throw out Terrace Marshall, Adam, because in Joe Brady's offense, the third wide receiver is so much more important than the number 1 tight end. I mean, we forget that last year, 4 players went over 1,000 scrimmage yards in that offense: Mike Davis, Curtis Samuel, DJ Moore, and Robbie Anderson. And so we know CMC is going to get his, but it was David Moore now versus Terrace Marshall. And we know that Curtis, Robbie, and DJ all kind of rotated in the slot. Well, one, maybe, hey, do you even have a shower narrative here with Joe Brady and Terrace Marshall? Adam, does that count? I mean, that's one where...
Of course.
There's that. Good. I just want to get clarification on the bit. That in 2019, people view Evan Terrace Marshall is a 1-year player because he basically filled that like Justin Jefferson slot role this past season. He scored 13 freaking touchdowns playing with Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson in 2019 with Joe Brady. I am so in on Terrace Marshall as like also a type that they don't have on their team as like a big bodied contested catch receiver. If he stays healthy and plays well in the preseason, he's absolutely starting in 3 wide receiver sets. And I think he eclipses 1,000 scrimmage yards again.
I like Terrace Marshall also, but everybody should be aware, disclaimer, Norris is a Stone Panthers homer, similar to when Evan talks about Notre Dame players. You got to take a little grain of salt when Norris talks about Panthers players.
Guess what? Guess what the Panthers got me to do? Help you guys nail the first defensive player in the NFL draft at number 8 overall. So you're welcome again.
Yeah. That was great. J.C. Horn, 3-1 to be the first defensive player. That was a good one.
This is also the case whenever Levitan talks about the Washington football team. I mean, just a diehard. I mean, if he opens up his closet back there, he's got a bunch of old John Riggins jerseys.
Yeah, listen, at the bottom of every single trash can, I'm sure at Panthers headquarters, they have my resume in about 20 different places. So they never hired me. So it's not like I'm going to say positive things about them on purpose.
When Doug Williams won the Super Bowl for the then called Redskins, he actually came to my elementary school, and I remember everybody got to shake his hand, and everybody was like, "I'm never washing my hand again." I shook Doug Williams' hand. I'm never washing again. Those are great times, man. Those are great times. Okay. Oh, I got to ask you, Josh.
Oh, let's do it.
How do you take Tutu Atwell over Terrace Marshall? I mean, I weigh around 155 pounds. I mean, what's going on here? Your Rams, you have your ear to the floor. You're texting Evan from the bathroom floor. What were they saying about Tutu Atwell?
One, I think it just shows how freaking fed up Sean McVay was with Jared Goff last year, that getting Matthew Stafford, they're basically now like, oh, we can throw it over 20 yards. And so we signed Deshaun Jackson. And then Sean McVay goes out there and compares Tutu Atwell to Deshaun Jackson.
Of course, the next Deshaun Jackson,
right? Obviously. And there's some very puzzling picks. I mean, Dwayne Eskridge, I know you guys talked about Kadarius Toney, like both of those, especially Toney. It's one of those players where you look across the league and you're like, oh, I love how teams out there can manufacture a touch for -2 yards and he takes it for 17. We just need a player like that. And then you like attach him to Jason Garrett and you're like, oh, go use this guy in the same exact way. It's not going to work. Yeah. It's not going to work. So Tutu, I mean, 149 pounds. I'm not exactly sure, but I'm kind of really in on just this Rams team. There's an unknown with Matthew Stafford there, but again, I think Sean McVay is ready to unleash what he wants his offense to be. And this will be the first time in a few years that he's able to do that.
Along similar lines, Adam, of your, always being really bothered by comparisons to Tyreek Hill, is like all these comparisons over the years to outliers like Deshaun Jackson.
It's the worst.
And, we were looking for 10 years for the next Anquan Bolden, never came. Yeah. The next Darren Sproles never came. And I've been guilty of this from time to time myself, I must admit. But, the next Richard Sherman, you remember Stanley Jean Baptiste? Yes. For years we were supposed to get, this 5th round cornerback that was huge and just couldn't play and all, But I was just wondering, how far do you think that Aaron Donald could throw Tutu Atwell?
Like a discus?
Like the world's strongest man competitions. He's out there doing that.
Right.
I mean, the Rams are exciting. I'm going to have Jordan Rodriguez hopefully on the show next week, who does a phenomenal job covering that team for The Athletic. Just because I want to know how different can this offense be. And I think it's significant. I'm in on all those players really this year.
By the way, I just got to state this for the record. There will be outliers. Your ability to identify those outliers like Tyreek Hill or Deshaun Jackson is way, way, way more difficult and unlikely than people realize. And so, yeah, I understand there's going to be outliers. You're printing money by not trying to identify them. That's my only point. People just are always all over me about this stuff. But I can't take it anymore.
Adam, did it drive you insane this year that, we were arguing between 149, 170, 180 pound receivers in like rounds 1 and 2. Then just 3 years ago, 6'2", 235 pound phenoms like AJ Brown and DK Metcalf went in round 2, and the NFL just like didn't even care about them.
I know.
It's crazy.
I couldn't even do
in defense of the outliers, though, and Sigmund Bloom has said this before. If you are able to identify the outliers, that can give you a huge edge. The way to not identify the outliers, however, is to compare them to other outliers, because then they're not outliers. You know what I mean? But if you can identify the guy that, doesn't necessarily check all these boxes and, is drafted a little bit later or whatever, or, has draft Twitter all against them, then that can give you a big edge. But the way to not do that is to compare them to other outliers.
Yeah, for sure. And also, like, the hit rate on trying to identify outliers is so low. I mean, we're just printing by not trying to do it. But anyways, it's for another show.
Before we go, one final piece of information. Let's leave on a positive note here. A lot of people get nervous with their final underdog fantasy pick out there in like the 18th round when you're trying to win $1 million. If we're talking about a rookie who I think can do it, pick 197, Amari Rodgers with the Green Bay Packers. Because Brian Gutekunst, I think this is the type of player he's been searching for in the slot considerably. And Amari Rodgers is great in the red zone in terms of back shoulder fades, which we know Aaron Rodgers hopefully is throwing for the Green Bay Packers this year. And so he's also a player that I don't think has, a lot of roadblocks to get in the starting lineup. So, it feels, I know in drafts right now, when you get to 16, 17, 18, that everyone's gone, but maybe star Amari Rodgers in your underdog app and pick him.
Josh, how bad does it get if it's Jordan Love, though? How bad does it get?
So bad. I mean,
so bad.
But then they did it to themselves, did they not? Well, I should say Brian Gutekunst did it to himself, because it certainly sounds like he and LaFleur weren't even on the same page with that selection. It's crazy. I mean, these are billion-dollar businesses, and they can't even communicate correctly. Like every single 32 one of these teams are different. It just drives me insane to see the similarities between like poorly run businesses in the real world and then inside of football. It's nuts.
The best part of the Aaron Rodgers story to me, I was reading some today, like the straw that broke the camel's back was when they cut Jay Kumaro. It's like, you can do anything, but don't cut my boy Jay Kumaro. All right. By the way, isn't Amari Rodgers like 5'9" also? I mean, is anybody big in this entire class?
That's why he's going the last round here. We're not talking about
outlier, bro. Outlier.
Okay. Just saying. I just had to put it out there.
I thought you would want to stand up for your 5'9" boys, Adam.
I wish I was 5'9". Okay. That's going to do it for this.
By the way, 5'9", 59, the greatest mock draft score of all time.
Okay. All right. I shouldn't even let you do this after this performance, but Josh, tell the people where they can find you, where they can find your work, where they can find you on social, et cetera, et cetera.
Of course. Everyone out there, go and subscribe to the Underdog Football Show. That's what I want you to do. And if you don't like it, then you can go unsubscribe. We also have a channel on YouTube, Underdog Fantasy. We do a bunch of live streams every week. Hayden Winks is fantastic. He's super smart. And I'm just there to ask him good questions and try to follow up with some tidbits. So Adam, Evan, always a pleasure. Producer Luke, always a pleasure to join you guys as well. I know we'll be in contact and conversation this summer as well. Thanks for the continued support. Appreciate it.
All right. Love it, buddy. Okay. That's going to do it. We'll be back next week to talk week 1 lines. Evan Walters is going to put his Evan Walters hat on next week. Week 1 opening lines, maybe some more futures bets and stuff like that. We'll be back next week to talk about that. Stay tuned. For Producer Luke, for Josh Norris, for Evan, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.